Hey, it's Mo Egger. This spring, make Long Neck Sports Grill you and your buddies go-to hangout. Never miss a baseball game on their 4K TVs. Check out the amazing beer selection. And if you haven't yet tried Long Neck's wings, what are you waiting for? Long Neck's has 3 locations in Northern Kentucky, Wilder, Hebron, and Richwood. Each one of them very easy to get to. And don't forget, there's no better place to hang out when the weather gets warm than Long Neck's outdoor patio. Long Neck Sports Grill. This spring, stay late. Come often. Every Wednesday, we talk injuries with one of the experts at Ortho Cincy. Ortho Cincy has specialists and locations all across the tri-state, and they've got walk-in orthopedic urgent care weekdays from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. and on Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Learn more at orthocincy.com. That's orthocincy.com. Joining us this week is Dr. John Fritch from Ortho Cincy. It's always awesome to have you on. Let's start locally. Reiver Sanmartin has gone on the injured list. He is going to miss 4 to 6 weeks with elbow soreness that has been diagnosed as a stress reaction in his elbow. What is a stress reaction in someone's elbow?
Yeah. I mean, it's a real bummer that he's getting shut down for a little while, but a stress reaction is essentially similar to a stress fracture, where you have a reaction in the bone as a result of an injury that causes some pain. Sometimes this is due to a pull of a ligament against the bone, and it kind of acts like a stress fracture. And so the primary way we get this better is by shutting them down for a while, giving it some rest, allowing it to heal, treating it kind of like a break, but knowing that it's not a complete break that would require surgery or anything like that.
So he's going to be shut down for the next 4 to 6 weeks. In the very short term, what will be looked at to determine the next steps?
No, of course. And so in the short term, it's about really calming down this elbow and reducing the amount of stress on it. That could involve bracing to allow his elbow to just move in certain ways and reduce any excessive pull against that stress reaction. Will involve working with his trainers and therapy to make sure we keep his elbow moving and rehabbing it with reducing that stress. But yeah, I mean, essentially for the next couple of weeks, shutting it down and then gradually progressing him back to where he was and building him back up. Worst case scenario obviously would involve surgery. When would that sort of thing be discussed? Yeah, surgery would be discussed if we're not able to get him back to his prior level of play. And so usually they'll take the appropriate steps to shut him down for the next 4 to 6 weeks and gradually rehab him. However, it's possible that that stress reaction comes back with increased activity. And if he's not able, to continue throwing overhead and doing what he needs to do for the team, then sometimes they'll talk about fixing these as if they are a fracture, where we'll use some external support, whether that be with a screw or a plate and screws to hold things where they need to be to allow it to heal and take stress off of that area. Aaron Judge returned to the New York Yankees lineup last night. That's good news for Reds fans who are hoping to see him at GABP next weekend when the Yankees come to town. Came back after suffering a hip strain that he suffered back in late April. Let's start with the actual injury. What's a hip strain? So hip strains are like muscle pulls, essentially. A strain is technically a partial tear to either the muscle or tendon. And so when you have a tear of that muscle, it causes quite a bit of pain. The good news is that almost always that heals up on its own. On a scale of different hip injuries, from less severe to more severe, where does a hip strain rank? I would say it's on the lower end of those types of injuries. Certainly, a strain means just kind of partially torn, and almost always just with some time, some rest, some rehab will heal on its own. Whereas on the higher end of things, we talk about, say, tendon tears. You tear your hamstring where it's completely torn, and then we have to go back in and repair it down. He's obviously playing now, and so barring any sort of complications, he'll be at GABP next weekend. But is this something that is likely going to bother him as he goes through the season? It's possible. And so anytime you have these hip strains, you're at high risk of re-injuring yourself. Anytime you have a partial tear of the muscle, it heals and it scars back together, but it creates a stress riser just adjacent to it where essentially similar activities pulling against it can cause a re-injury right next to it. And so he's going to have to be watching this for a while, working with his trainers, making sure he's warming up appropriately and keeping an eye out to make sure this doesn't happen again.
Dr. John Fritch from Ortho Cincy is with us. Let's talk about Bryce Harper, who is back with the Philadelphia Phillies after making what some are calling an impossibly fast return from Tommy John surgery, returning to the Phillies lineup just 160 days after having the procedure. He went through an injury that occurred originally back last April of 22, had a partial tear of his UCL that was discovered in May of 2022, finally had the offseason Tommy John surgery after helping the Phillies get to the World Series. Give me an idea of the advancements that have been made with this specific procedure that have allowed for such quick returns, including one from Bryce Harper that took just 160 days.
Yeah, pretty impressive. I mean, at the end of the day, these athletes are ready to really recover from these injuries. But the surgery has changed more recently. And so a lot of these injuries we initially were reconstructing with new tendons when they have a complete tear. We borrow a tendon from elsewhere and turn that into a ligament, and that does take a while to recover from. We're finding that more recently, some of these partial UCL injuries are repairable, and we're using something to supplement that, usually some type of suture device to provide kind of a belt and suspender support for it to allow it to heal up properly. And we're finding that these athletes are actually recovering faster, able to return to play faster.
What factors allow one athlete to recuperate very quickly and another to maybe take a while when you're dealing with this specific procedure?
Yeah, and so one of the primary factors is the degree of tear. If it's completely torn, we're maybe looking at reconstructing it with a new tendon, whereas if it's partially torn and we've tried rehabbing it, but they're still not able to get up to the pitch velocity they need to or get the overhead strength they need to, then we're talking about repairing it, not replacing it with a new tendon, and using the suture to kind of help supplement it.
Awesome insight as always. Dr. John Fritch from Ortho Cincy. I appreciate the time as always. We'll do it again soon.
Hey, thanks so much for inviting me back on your show. I appreciate it, Mel.
No, thank you. OrthoCincy.com. We say this all the time. One of the great things about the people at Ortho Cincy is they have specialists and locations all across the tri-state. It includes walk-in orthopedic urgent care weekdays from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. and also on Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. in Edgewood and Eastgate. It is, without saying, easier and cheaper than going to an ER when you have an urgent orthopedic injury. Go to orthocincy.com, orthocincy.com, orthocincy.com. This baseball season, catch every game at Long Neck Sports Grill. There's 3 locations in Northern Kentucky, Wilder, Hebron, and Richwood. Each one of them very easy to get to. Each one of them has 4K TVs all over the place, and each Long Neck's location has an amazing beer selection. Plus, if you haven't tried Long Neck's wings, what are you waiting for? And don't forget, as the weather gets warmer, there's no better place to hang out than Long Neck's outdoor patio. Long Neck Sports Grill. This spring and summer, stay late, come often.